Jonah was speechless for a while, and I quickly ran to the side of the road to hail a taxi. Suddenly, a big hand grabbed me. But after seeing the scars under my clothes, he quickly retracted. I almost cried, "Don't." But Jonah gritted his teeth and spoke firmly. "You won't be able to get a taxi at this hour. I'll take you." Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. With mixed emotions, I got into Hubert's car again. Jonah turned off the dashcam just in case. "Hold on a little longer, we'll be there soon." He thought I resisted getting into Hubert's car, and in a way, I did. But as long as I could escape from Hubert, from the Mercer family, this endurance was nothing. After taking the car to the prearranged community, I texted the agent saying that I wanted to move in directly. In order to achieve good performance, he came early in the morning with the contract and keys, smiling at the entrance of the community. Jonah was worried and followed me upstairs to look at the house. It was a well-furnished loft, although the area was relatively small, but all the home furnishings were complete. 120 square meters. It is already the largest apartment in our community. Miss Hector, whether you live alone or with your boyfriend, there is plenty of space. I looked at Jonah, and he remained silent, lowering his head to review the contract in his hand. Then he asked about things like water, electricity, and air conditioning, and after confirming that there were no issues, he handed them to me. I don't know why, but I trust him very much. Maybe it's because of his good temper that he doesn't care if I punch or kick him every time he pulls me out of Hubert's office. Or maybe it's because he followed Hubert's instructions and found me in the bar, beating up those men who wanted to touch me. Without hesitation, I quickly signed the contract. I took out my bank card and handed it to the agent. With a swipe on the POS machine, he flattered Jonah and me a few more times, and happily left. In the empty room, only Jonah and I were left, and he suddenly became a little uneasy. "Miss Hector, I should go back now." I nodded, wanting to write a check to thank him. That used to be my habit, but now I found that my pockets were empty. Yes, I left with nothing. I had planned to bring 2 sets of close-fitting clothes, but I didn't expect that even my own room would be occupied. Not to mention the checkbook. "Jonah, how can I thank you?" Jonah was slightly surprised. No need to thank me." I didn't say anything more. Even if he needs my thanks in the future, I won't refuse. Jonah left. He still had to go back to work. And before leaving, he said to me, "Have a good rest." Of course, I had to rest. I even came up with the thought of finally being able to rest. For dozens of kilometers, I slept under a rain shelter in the farmland, slept on low tree trunks. Although I called it sleeping, my mind was always on high alert. Alert for people who were chasing me, alert for wild beasts that could harm me in the wilderness. Back at the Mercer family, I was always waiting for an opportunity to escape. So when I sat on the soft bed in the guest room, I pinched the soft flesh on the inside of my thigh again and again, just to stay awake. I took off my shoes and walked upstairs to the bedroom. There was only a bare mattress on the big bed. Of course, I didn't have time to buy home furnishings. But luckily, this loft came with blackout curtains. I pulled the curtains and collapsed onto the mattress, falling into a deep sleep. When I regained consciousness, I heard the sound of banging on the door. It echoed throughout the room and the entire hallway. But I had slept for too long and couldn't move as my limbs seemed to have forgotten how to function. It wasn't until the lock core of the door slammed onto the floor with a click that I snapped back to reality. Who was it? Was it a kidnapper? Or was it Hubert Mercer? I quickly searched the room for something to defend myself with, but found nothing. So I got up and went downstairs. In my panic, I stumbled and fell when I was just 1 or 2 steps away. "Erica!" A clear voice rang out. I looked up and saw Jonah standing outside my door, panting and looking anxious, holding a shopping bag. He rushed over and helped me up. "Are you all right?" I was still in a daze and didn't know what was happening. The locksmith outside replaced the lock with a new one in just a few moments. Then he packed up his tools and put them in his backpack. "Hey, young lady, your boyfriend knocked on the door for 2 hours and you didn't open it." He was really worried. I held my head, feeling groggy and half asleep. It seemed like I really hadn't heard anything. The locksmith continued, I heard you have depression, right? Your boyfriend was so worried that you might hurt yourself. Let me give you some advice. Why don't you do something nice for yourself and don't think about giving up? I looked at Jonah, who was a bit embarrassed. And he let go of me and walked towards the locksmith. Enough, please don't say anymore. I'm not her boyfriend. How much is the lock replacement? After the locksmith received the money, he had a knowing look on his face. He picked up his tools, and before leaving, he said something to me. Young lady, this young man seems pretty good. Give him a chance, will you? Jonah closed the door with a thud and dared not look at me. I'm sorry, I was afraid you were at home. So I called the locksmith, but I didn't say anything. I knew Jonah was a straightforward person, and his emotions always showed on his face. It was probably because he was really worried just now that the locksmith made such a guess. It's okay, I was just sleeping. Actually, Jonah didn't need to worry at all. If I weren't someone who valued my life, I wouldn't have crawled back from hell. I licked my dry lips, and Jonah, seeing this, rummaged through the shopping bag he had hastily thrown on the ground earlier and pulled out a bottle of milk. He unscrewed the cap and handed it to me. I took it and drank it in small sips. It was cool and refreshing, as if it had just been taken out of the refrigerator. He seemed to know that I only liked to drink cold milk before. Jonah looked around the house and then turned his gaze towards me. He noticed that I was still wearing a long dress, albeit slightly wrinkled. Jonah asked in confusion, How long have you been sleeping? I thought for a moment and replied, A little over 2 hours. Didn't he say he knocked on the door for 2 hours? Jonah's expression became strange as he spoke. Think about it carefully, it has been 2 days since you signed the contract. 2 days? I was surprised. Jonah was dressed casually, but I distinctly remembered him wearing a suit this morning. It turned out that I hadn't eaten or drank anything and had slept for 2 days and nights. Jonah already knew the answer and reached out to touch the table. Sure enough, there was a layer of dust. Since moving in, I hadn't cleaned the apartment. He took off his black jacket and threw it onto the chair. As it landed, a cloud of dust rose up. Sit here. I didn't know what he was going to do, so I walked over and sat on his jacket. He rolled up his sleeves and walked into the bathroom. After a series of sounds, Jonah took out a wet cloth and began wiping the dining table, then the coffee table and the wardrobe. You can rest for a while. When I finish tidying up, I'll take you out to eat. Take me out to eat? I felt curious, as well as surprised by his domestic skills. Jonah was Hubert's bodyguard, a man of few words with his fists. But I never expected him to be so meticulous when it came to household chores. After about an hour, Jonah finished mopping the floor, then went into the bathroom to wash the sweat off his face before coming out. Are you getting impatient? With his wet hair and water droplets falling from the tips, along with his rugged features, he wore a naturally mischievous smile. I absent-mindedly nodded and then shook my head. He laughed heartily and walked over, wanting to reach out and touch my head, but then hesitated and pulled back. Let's go. I stood up and he grabbed his jacket. Shall we go to Han Cuisine? It's sweet, I heard those girls from Mercer Group say it's delicious. Those girls should be employees of the Mercer family's company. Jonah sometimes interacted with them, so did he deliberately inquire about the restaurant? Hearing him say that, I also felt hungry. After all, I had slept for 2 days and nights. Besides, I hadn't eaten enough at the Mercer family's house that day and ended up vomiting. But just as I took a few steps forward, my stomach suddenly cramped. I rushed into the bathroom, clutching the toilet as I retched. There was nothing in my stomach to vomit, so only brown blood came out. Seeing this, Jonah, who followed me in, supported my shoulder. I looked so thin, making his hug half empty. Erica, are you okay? He helped me to the wash basin, where I rinsed my mouth with water. With a serious expression, he asked, Have you been to the hospital for a checkup since you came back? I shook my head. He immediately lifted me up and went downstairs with the keys. I lay on his back and was speechless in pain. In the taxi, he held my acupuncture point with his experienced hands to relieve the pain in my stomach. "Sir, please go faster," Jonah urged, and the driver, seeing my condition in the rearview mirror, silently increased the speed to the maximum. I was in a daze throughout the entire process of the hospital examination. It wasn't until the gastric lavage was over that Jonah came to my ward with the test results in his hand. He sat down beside my bed, frowning as he examined the medical records. The hospital chair was too short for him, so he had to spread his long legs and rest his knees high up. "Do you want to stay in the hospital?" he asked me. "What did the doctor say?" "The doctor said it's not necessary, but..." "Then I don't want to." I didn't want to stay in a place where people come and go. It felt unsafe. Jonah fell silent for a moment. "All right, but we have to come to the hospital every day for medication and checkups from now on." I could feel that some wounds on my body had been treated. During this period, you can only eat porridge and drink liquid food. I didn't need Jonah to say it, I could probably guess. For the past 3 months, I had been eating spoiled steamed buns and rice, sometimes hungry and sometimes full. My stomach must have been damaged. "Jonah." "Yeah? But I'm really hungry now." Jonah's eyes were filled with concern. Because he learned from the doctor what I had probably eaten. Those things remained in my stomach, undigested and unable to be vomited, so I had to have a gastric lavage. He gently placed his hand on my forehead, as if to reassure me, and promised, "I will make the porridge delicious, trust me, okay?" Jonah was as good as his word. His culinary skills were superb, and he could make even the simplest congee into a work of art. Thanks to him, I felt that my body had recovered a lot during this time. But just as I was about to have the 3rd bowl of cashew congee for lunch, Jonah stopped me. He smiled, his eyes narrowing. Did the little glutton steal some while I was juicing? Seeing that my plan had failed, I sighed and put the bowl into the sink. Jonah put down the half-cut fruit and walked over, saying, "I'll wash the bowl. You go and watch TV on the sofa." I nodded, not feeling particularly enthusiastic. Suddenly, he grabbed me and pulled me back, sandwiching me between the sink counter and his body. "You ignoring me just because I didn't let you have the congee?" I remained silent, pouting and looking away. He chuckled and said, "The doctor said that starting tomorrow, you can have regular meals. I'll take you to have delicious food." My eyes brightened. "Really?" "Really," he replied. Jonah's expression was indulgent as he let go of me and patted my back. He sent me to the sofa and then busied himself in the kitchen. Sitting on the sofa, I started playing with the bank card my parents had left me. Besides the money inside, it held a lot of memories. I suddenly felt like a blessed child, their love never leaving me, even before the accident, when they were still planning for my future. Jonah, he was like a gift from them. I put the bank card away. Since it was part of my dowry, I had to keep it safe. The TV was playing the news, and after a segment of music, I suddenly saw a glaring headline. After the daughter of the Mercer group was kidnapped, she walked back to the city barefoot, looking crazy and no longer the same as before. I slapped the TV off and started breathing heavily. I silently told myself that it was all in the past, that I would never see those people again, never see Hubert Mercer again. After calming down for a while, my heart finally returned to its normal rhythm. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I guessed it was probably another delivery that Jonah had ordered. After all, ever since I moved in, he had been the one designing and arranging the entire loft. Without much thought, I got up to open the door. But outside the door, I saw the person I didn't want to see. Dana Silver carried a few bags of fruit, and when she saw me, she smiled brightly. "Miss Hector, I heard that you were hospitalized recently. I came here specifically to visit you." I coldly questioned, "How did you know?" Dana thought for a moment and put on an innocent look. Of course, it was Mr. Mercer who told me. Thump, thump, thump. My heart pounded like a drum. How did Hubert Mercer know? Was he monitoring me? If Dana knows my home address, does that mean he knows too? Is he coming to find me? Get out! I struggled to squeeze out a sentence, wanting to close the door. But Dana blocked it. After being scolded, she finally dropped the pretense and her eyes turned vicious. Erica Hector, Mr. Mercer already knows your home address. You better move out quickly and stop shamelessly clinging to him. I'm not. Dana snorted. Not? The kidnappers beat you up badly, right? I heard there were sticks, whips, and the curling iron you had in your bag that day. It must have hurt when it burned your skin, right? They fed you disgusting food that even dogs wouldn't eat, but you still ate it. My pupils contracted sharply, and I could barely stand. The thing I least wanted to remember was torn open by Dana. How did you know? Dana looked smug. It was my suggestion to delay Mr. Mercer's payment to make you suffer. Who told you to be an arrogant and willful young miss, ignorant of the world, and cling to him? So, I hinted to those kidnappers that the more they beat you, the faster the money would arrive. I almost collapsed. Why? Why did she do this? Why did Hubert Mercer do this? In my mind, the last strand of sanity snapped. I grabbed Dana like a madwoman, trying to bite her, wanting us to fall down the stairs together, to die together. Jonah heard a commotion in the room and ran to the door, calling out, "Erica." I couldn't hear any sound in my ears. And I only had one thought, which was to kill Dana Silver. Jonah forcefully separated us and held me in his arms as I cried uncontrollably. He pushed Dana away when she tried to attack again, showing no mercy. Dana collided with the stair railing, making a loud bang sound, and she was in too much pain to stand up. "What are you doing?" A stern voice interrupted us. Hubert Mercer, still dressed in a suit, calmly made his entrance. In stark contrast to every desperate moment of my life, I felt so pitiful. After Hubert came upstairs, he saw me leaning in Jonah's arms, and his expression grew even darker. He turned around and helped Dana up. "Mr. Mercer, I just wanted to visit Miss Hector out of kindness. But who knew she wouldn't appreciate it and even came up to hit me? Maybe because I found out that she was living together with Mr. Kenyon." Living together? Hubert's anger surged. Jonah remained silent, only focusing on embracing me and patting my shoulder. After seeing that I had calmed down a bit, he tried to take me back to the room, but Hubert stopped him. "Erica, stop making a scene and come home with me." His tone carried a command, as he still believed that I was the one causing trouble. He tried to pull me out of Jonah's embrace, but Jonah blocked him. "Mr. Mercer, this is Erica's home." "Erica? Quite intimate. Is this the reason for your resignation?" Jonah resigned? I looked up, but could only see his sharp jawline. As the two sides remained deadlocked, Dana suddenly cried out in pain. "Mr. Mercer, I'm in so much pain." Hubert looked at me, then at Dana, and finally turned around to carry Dana away. As he left me with a sentence. "Erica, I'll give you one more chance. If you don't come home this time, you'll never have to come back." I trembled in fear, but Jonah whispered softly in my ear. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." After the incident with Dana last time, I decided to move. Originally, I hoped that Hubert would never find me again. But every move I made seemed to be under his watchful eyes. Jonah was always there for me. But at the moment, there were no suitable housing options. How about going to my place first? Hubert already knew this address, and Jonah was afraid that he would come looking for me when he wasn't around. "Your place?" I asked in return. Jonah still blushed, but he had made some progress. At least now he dared to look me in the eye in this situation. "Well, don't overthink it. My place has 2 bedrooms, it's enough. But we can't keep living in 2 bedrooms forever." It was like this at my place, and it would be the same at his place. When would we be able to confirm the cohabitation that Dana mentioned? Jonah's eyes widened slightly, as if I had said something incredible. I remained calm and unaffected, as I had already planned to tease him about this matter. I took out the bank card that my parents had left me. Then I said to Jonah with utmost seriousness, "Jonah Kenyon, you also know that I am a foster daughter of the Mercer family, a plaything that the Mercer family can discard at any time. But I also have genuine feelings, even though most of it is tarnished, I still have a tiny bit that is pure. I don't know if you're willing to accept this tiny bit of genuine affection?" His eyes turned red, and he spoke cautiously. Erica, your genuine affection will always be pure, even if it's just a tiny bit. I couldn't ask for more. I embraced him emotionally and tightly. And only after a while did I remember to put the bank card in his hand. This is my dowry. Jonah looked puzzled for a moment. Although it was called a dowry, it seemed like I was giving him an engagement gift. He laughed and said, "Sweetheart, take it back. The dowry should be kept in your own hands." "Oh, so the dowry should be kept in my own hands." Jonah hugged me again and whispered in my ear, "The dowry is the dowry, but the money in our family is yours too." Family, I liked the sound of that word.